Today I tell you the story of Ana Mendoza, a young Andalusian woman whose destiny was shaped by the conventions of an era where the heart rarely chose its own paths. Between the golden vineyards of Jerez and the Moorish palaces of Tangier, we will discover how true love can flourish even in the most unlikely circumstances. This is a narrative of dignity, silent resistance, and the courage to begin again. A story where each gesture carries the weight of millennial traditions, and where the perfume of almond blossoms witnesses the transformation of a soul. Before we begin this journey through feelings, I would like to know, where are you joining us from on this journey? Leave in the comments the city from which you are listening to us. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This way we can continue bringing these stories that touch the heart and cross generations. Year 1895. Location: Jerez de la Frontera, Andalusia, Spain. The wind whispered among the vines like a portent when Don Rafael Mendoza lowered his eyes before the proposal that would forever change his daughter's destiny. The autumn leaves danced in the cobblestone courtyard of the old winery, carrying with them the sweet and melancholic aroma of grapes that would no longer belong to them. Ana embroidered by the window of the sitting room, her delicate fingers moving the needle in precise stitches over the white linen. The last rays of sun, filtered through the lace curtains, created golden halos in her chestnut hair, while she pretended not to hear the conversation that would seal her future. 50,000 duros, repeated the intermediary, a short man with waxed moustaches whose small eyes gleamed with the greed of successful business. Caliph Mustafa Ben Ali is willing to settle all the Mendoza family debts. The silence that followed weighed like lead in the air perfumed by the garden jasmines. Ana felt the needle tremble between her fingers, a drop of blood blooming on the white fabric like a premature rose. Don Rafael ran his trembling hand through his graying hair. 3 generations of his family had cultivated those lands, producing the most refined wines in the region. Now debts accumulated from poor harvests and failed investments threatened to sweep away centuries of tradition. And in exchange, the patriarch's voice came out hoarse, though everyone knew the answer: marriage to Miss Ana naturally. The Caliph is an honorable man. He will follow all protocols, respect Christian traditions. Ana closed her eyes, feeling the world slowly spin around her. At 18, she had dreamed of balls in Seville, of a young husband who would court her with poetry and flowers, not of a 72-year-old man from across the Mediterranean, whose fortune was his only known virtue. The conversation continued in low tones, but Ana could no longer distinguish the words. Only the roar of blood in her ears and the persistent perfume of the almond trees that were beginning to bloom in the yard, promising a spring she might not see on Spanish soil. When the intermediary left, leaving papers on the mahogany table, Don Rafael approached his daughter. His steps echoed heavily on the terracotta tiles. "Ana, daughter." She raised her eyes, and in them he saw not the resignation he expected, but something deeper, a silent dignity that made him look away. "How much time do I have?" she asked, her voice clear as crystal. 3 weeks. The steamer leaves from Cadiz at the beginning of December. Ana only nodded, carefully folding the embroidery. The blood on the linen had darkened, reminding her that some stains never come out, no matter how much you try to wash them. That night, lying in her wrought-iron bed, Ana listened to the crickets singing in the garden and wondered if there would be crickets in Morocco. The full moon poured silver over the clay roof tiles, and she engraved each shadow in her memory, each aroma of orange blossom that entered through the half-open window. 3 weeks to say goodbye to everything she knew. 3 weeks to accept that her life no longer belonged to her. But while caressing the medal of the Virgin of La Macarena that her mother had left her, Ana made a silent promise. They could sell her body, but her soul would remain free. And it was with this certainty that she fell asleep, while the wind continued to whisper prophecies among the vines that would soon no longer be hers. The morning of departure dawned wrapped in mist, as if even the sky wanted to hide the farewell. The steamer, Santa Isabel, waited in the port of Cadiz, its chimney expelling black smoke that mixed with the low clouds of the Andalusian winter. Ana remained motionless on deck, watching the Spanish coast gradually disappear in the haze. Doña Carmen, her chaperone, a widowed lady with precise gestures and maternal gaze, tried to cheer her with stories of Tangier, but the words were lost in the noise of the machines and the cry of the seagulls. "It's a city of 1,000 colors, child," said Doña Carmen, adjusting the wool shawl over Anna's shoulders. "They say the sunsets paint the strait with gold and purple." But Anna only held firmly to the railing, her knuckles white as alabaster. The navy blue wool traveling dress fluttered in the salty wind, and she felt as if she were dressed for her own funeral. The sea churned in foamy waves, reflecting the turmoil in her chest. With each mile they moved away from Spain, Anna felt a piece of herself being torn away, like rose petals scattered by the gale. 2 days later, when the Rif Mountains appeared on the horizon, Anna finally understood the irreversibility of her situation. Tangier rose from the Moroccan coast like a white and golden mirage, its minarets piercing the indigo-blue sky. The palace that awaited her was a construction of dream and nightmare intertwined. Horseshoe arches framed courtyards where fountains murmured songs in Arabic, and tiles of impossible colors created gardens of perfect geometry on the walls. The aroma of rosewater and sandalwood impregnated each corridor, so intense that Anna had to lean against the marble wall. "The Caliph's new wife," whispered the servants in their melodious language, their curious eyes observing each movement of the young Spanish woman. Anna was led to the women's quarters, where she discovered a parallel world of silks and whispers. The women of the harem, some older wives, others privileged servants, received her with cautious courtesy. Their dresses were a rainbow of flowing fabrics, their arms adorned with bracelets that tinkled softly with each gesture. Fatima, the oldest of the wives, approached Anna with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You are very young," she said in halting Spanish. "The Caliph, he appreciates youth." The words carried a meaning that Anna preferred not to decipher. That night, while the other women bathed her in water perfumed with jasmine oils and dressed her in ivory-colored silks, she felt like a doll being prepared for some incomprehensible ritual. The polished bronze mirror reflected a stranger, dark hair loose down her back, eyes lined with kohl, golden bracelets on her wrists. Anna touched her own face, trying to recognize the young Andalusian woman beneath the layers of Moorish tradition. The ceremony took place in the great hall of the palace, under a carved wooden ceiling that seemed suspended by angels themselves. Caliph Mustafa ben Ali was exactly as Anna had imagined, a tall and solemn man, with carefully trimmed white beard and eyes that had seen many springs. He observed her with the satisfaction of one who admires a valuable acquisition, and Anna felt a shiver run down her spine. The Imam's words mixed with the distant sound of the sea, creating a symphony that sealed her destiny. When everything was over, Anna was officially the Caliph's youngest wife. But while the guests celebrated with honey sweets and mint tea, she could only think of the almond trees of Jerez, which would be blooming alone at that moment. And it was thinking of them that Anna prepared for the night that would change everything, not knowing that destiny had plans very different from what anyone could imagine. The nuptial chambers had been prepared with meticulous care. Red and white rose petals formed winding paths over Persian rugs, beeswax candles projected dancing shadows on the blue tile walls, and golden braziers perfumed the air with sandalwood and amber. Anna remained seated on the edge of the bed, her hands intertwined over the ivory silk dress. The bridal veil, embroidered with gold threads, had been carefully arranged around her by the servants, who whispered words of encouragement in Arabic before discreetly withdrawing. The silence that followed was almost palpable. Only the distant murmur of the fountain in the courtyard and the rustling of linen curtains in the night breeze broke the solemn quiet. Anna concentrated on these sounds, trying to calm the turmoil in her chest. When heavy footsteps echoed in the marble corridor, she closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer. The carved wooden door opened with a soft groan, and Caliph Mustafa entered his private chambers. He wore an embroidered silk tunic, and the aroma of rosewater mixed with something more earthly, age perhaps or the weight of years, preceded his approach. Anna kept her eyes lowered, as she had been instructed, observing only the embroidered slippers that moved slowly in her direction. "Anna," he said, his voice hoarse but not unpleasant. "My beautiful Spanish wife." She raised her eyes then, meeting the gaze of a man who could have been her grandfather. There was kindness in those dark eyes, but also a determination that made her swallow hard. Mustafa approached slowly, his heavy breathing echoing in the silent room. Anna noticed how his hands trembled slightly, not from nervousness, but from something she couldn't identify. When he sat beside her on the bed, the mattress sank under his considerable weight. "You are even more beautiful than they told me," he murmured, raising a trembling hand to touch her face. It was then that it happened. The moment Mustafa's fingers brushed Anna's face, a spasm ran through his body. His eyes widened, his hand froze in the air, and a strange sound, half sigh, half roar, escaped from his throat. Anna watched, paralyzed, as the caliph bent forward, bringing a hand to his chest. His breathing became labored, gasping, and small drops of sweat sprouted on his forehead. "Sir?" whispered Anna, instinctively extending her hands to support him. But Mustafa had already lost consciousness, collapsing heavily onto the embroidered cushions. His large and solemn body lay motionless, only the almost imperceptible movement of his chest indicating that he still breathed. Anna remained motionless for a moment that seemed eternal, processing what had happened. The man who should take her virginity, who would forever change her condition as a maiden, lay unconscious a few feet from her, victim of a sudden apoplexy. The silence returned to the chambers, but now charged with a different tension. Anna observed Mustafa's serene face, noting how age had carved deep lines around his closed eyes. It was strange to see him like this, vulnerable and human, so different from the imposing figure who had presided over the ceremony just hours before. Slowly, Anna rose from the bed. Her bare feet touched the Persian rug, and she headed to the door, hesitant. Should she call someone? Scream for help? But something stopped her. Perhaps the instinct of self-preservation, or simply the shock of the moment. Instead, she returned to Mustafa's side and, with infinite delicacy, adjusted a pillow under his head. She covered him with an embroidered linen sheet and sat in a nearby chair watching him breathe. Hours passed. The moon completed its arc in the sky. The candles slowly consumed themselves, and Anna remained in vigil, guarding the secret of that night that would change both destinies unexpectedly. When the first dawn light tinged the curtains with pale gold, Anna finally understood the magnitude of what had happened. She remained a virgin, her marriage remained incomplete, and the man who should be her master lay unconscious, now dependent on her discretion. And it was in this complicit silence that the first secret Anna would carry for years was born, the secret of a night when destiny had winked, offering her a freedom she had never dared to dream. The 4 months that followed stretched like a period suspended in time. Mustafa remained in his chambers, attended by Moorish and Christian doctors who whispered dark diagnoses in the palace corridors. Anna, officially wife but secretly still maiden, navigated the complex protocols of her new position. The other women of the harem watched her with poorly disguised curiosity. Fatima, especially, looked for signs, a change in posture, a different brightness in her eyes, any indication that the young Spanish woman had truly become Mustafa's woman. "How is our Lord today?" Fatima asked every morning, her dark eyes scrutinizing Anna's face for clues. "Resting," Anna invariably replied, her hands occupied with intricate embroideries that had become her way of maintaining sanity. In truth, Anna spent hours beside the unconscious caliph, reading him passages from the Quran in her hesitant Arabic pronunciation, or simply talking in Spanish about the almond trees of Jerez and the aroma of jasmine on summer nights. She had discovered that in some strange way, she felt less alone in the presence of that sleeping man than in the midst of the whispered intrigues of the harem. The doctors came and went, shaking their heads gravely. The old imam visited daily, murmuring prayers in classical Arabic, while passing prayer beads between his arthritic fingers. Even European diplomats appeared occasionally, concerned about the political implications of a possible succession. Anna learned to read those signs like a fortune-teller interprets cards. The growing tension in the corridors, the conversations interrupted when she passed, the speculative looks from Mustafa's sons when they visited the palace. It was during one of these family visits that Anna first heard whispers about inheritance. 2 of Mustafa's older sons were talking in French in the garden, imagining she didn't understand. "If she's pregnant." "Impossible to prove anyway. The will is clear about the rights of a legitimate widow." Anna pretended not to hear, concentrating on the roses that perfumed the evening air. But the seeds of understanding had been planted. Her future and her safety depended not only on her status as wife, but on secrets that only she guarded. The weeks dragged on with the slowness of honey. Anna established a routine that included long walks through the interior gardens, Arabic lessons with one of the more educated servants, and entire afternoons dedicated to embroidering tapestries that told silent stories. Each stitch was a prayer, each color a memory of home. The servants treated her with the respect due to the favorite wife, but Anna felt she was walking on thin ice. A wrong word, a misinterpreted gesture, and her precarious position could crumble like a sandcastle. It was on a January afternoon, when the Atlantic wind brought the distant aroma of rain, that everything changed. Anna was sitting beside Mustafa, sewing golden beads onto a veil, when she noticed that his breathing had become even weaker. She leaned over him, observing the face that had become familiar during those months of silent vigil. There was a serenity in his features that hadn't existed before, as if a long internal struggle had finally come to an end. "Sir," she whispered, lightly touching his hand, but there was no response. Mustafa Ben Ali had departed as he had lived his last months, in silence, surrounded by secrets that only Anna knew. She remained seated for a long moment, holding his cold hand between hers. Through the window with Moorish bars, she could see the Rif Mountains bathed in the golden light of evening. It was beautiful and melancholic at the same time, like everything in her life had become. Finally, Anna rose and headed to the door. It was time to call the others, to assume her role in the theater of death and mourning. But first, she turned once more to the man who had been her husband only on paper. "Rest in peace," she murmured in Arabic, surprising herself with the sincerity in her own voice. And so, with Mustafa's death, Anna found herself a widow before having been truly a wife, heir to a fortune built on silence, guardian of secrets that would determine her destiny in the years to come. Mustafa Ben Ali's will was read on a February morning, when the almond trees were beginning to bloom in the palace gardens. The great hall filled with relatives, advisors, consular representatives, and curious onlookers, all eager to discover how the caliph's fortune would be distributed. Anna remained seated in a blue velvet chair, dressed in strict mourning, a black dress that Fatima had provided, following Moorish traditions. The dark veil partially covered her face, but couldn't hide the tension in her shoulders or the way her hands clenched over the fabric of her skirt. The notary, a thin man with golden glasses, unrolled the parchment with theatrical solemnity. His voice echoed through the high-ceilinged hall, reading provisions in Arabic and French that seemed endless. "To my beloved wife, Anna Mendoza Ben Ali, I leave 1/5 of all my movable and immovable assets, as established by Islamic law for legitimate widows." A murmur ran through the assembly. 1/5 of an immense fortune meant wealth sufficient to buy entire palaces. Anna felt all eyes turned to her, some calculating, others frankly hostile. Guy provided that matrimonial obligations are fulfilled according to sacred precepts. These words hung in the air like a sword. Anna felt the blood freeze in her veins. The silence in the hall became almost unbearable, punctuated only by the distant noise of fountains and the nervous rustling of papers. Hassan, Mustafa's eldest son, rose slowly. He was a middle-aged man with calculating eyes and carefully trimmed beard. Anna had always perceived his poorly disguised antipathy behind the protocolar courtesies. "Excellency," he addressed the Spanish consul present, "it would be appropriate to clarify whether all the conditions were duly fulfilled." The air became thick as honey. Anna felt that everyone in the hall held their breath, awaiting her response. It was the moment she had feared for months, when the secrets kept under lock and key would be tested for the first time. She rose slowly, her posture erect like a queen's. The morning gave her an almost ethereal dignity, and when she spoke her voice sounded clear and firm. "I was Mustafa Ben Ali's wife, in all aspects that law and tradition require." It wasn't a lie, technically. She had been a legal wife, had fulfilled all rituals, had been accepted by the family and community. What had happened, or not happened, in the private chambers was a matter that concerned only her and the deceased. The Spanish consul, Don Alfonso de Guzman, a man experienced in navigating turbulent diplomatic waters, nodded gravely. Senora Ben Ali was recognized as legitimate wife before the competent authorities. There is no reason to question her status. Hassan didn't give up easily. "But surely it would be prudent," interrupted Fatima with a cutting voice. would be to respect the memory of our Lord and the dignity of his widow. Anna looked at the older woman with surprise. She had always suspected Fatima's hostility, but now she saw something different in her eyes. Perhaps understanding or recognition of a dignity that transcended circumstances. The debate continued for hours, but to each objection raised by the family, a legal or religious precedent was found that supported her. Anna learned that day that power sometimes resides not in what is said, but in what is kept silent. When everything was over, she found herself officially a rich widow, but also the target of suspicions and resentments that would follow her like shadows. The papers were signed, the seals affixed, and Anna became owner of lands in Morocco, houses in Tangier and Fez, and an amount in gold sufficient to live like a princess for the rest of her life. That night, alone in her chambers that seemed even larger in Mustafa's absence, Anna contemplated the full moon through the barred window. She had won the first battle, but knew the war was just beginning, and it was then that she made a decision. She needed to leave that place. Wealth wasn't worth the golden prison, and the secrets she guarded were too heavy to carry in enemy territory. 3 months later, on a May morning perfumed by jasmines, Anna departed from Tangier on a steamer bound for Algeciras. She left behind a palace full of whispers, and carried with her only essential luggage and the silent weight of truths she would never reveal. But she also carried, unknowingly, the seed of a story that was yet to be written, a story that would involve Mustafa's youngest son, who at that moment was studying philosophy in Paris, oblivious to the destiny that awaited him. The cortijo that Anna chose for her new life was situated on a gentle hill near Tarifa, from where you could see the Strait of Gibraltar on a clear morning. It was a property of white stone and red tiles, surrounded by century-old olive trees and lavender fields that perfumed the air with wild sweetness. 8 years had passed since her escape from Tangier, 8 years of a life carefully built according to Andalusian respectability, but marked by the elegant solitude of a widow too young to stop dreaming and too rich not to arouse curiosity. Anna, now 26, had transformed into a woman of serene and melancholic beauty. The years of voluntary seclusion had refined her features, giving her eyes a depth that spoke of guarded secrets and silent battles. She always dressed in discreet colors, soft blues, pearl grays, cream whites, and wore her hair in elegant chignons that highlighted the delicate line of her neck. Her mornings followed a routine established like a ritual. She woke with the first light of dawn, when the fields still glistened with dew and crickets finished their nocturnal symphony. She put on a linen robe and walked to the small oratory she had built in the garden, where she prayed the rosary while watching the sun rise over the distant mountains. Then she had coffee alone on the terrace facing the fields, reading scarce correspondence. Letters from old family acquaintances, reports from administrators about her properties in Morocco, occasionally a line from her father, who had never fully recovered from the shame of having sold his daughter. The afternoons were dedicated to embroidery. Anna had developed her own technique, mixing Andalusian motifs with Moorish designs she had memorized during her months in Tangier. Each piece told a silent story, sometimes of longing, others of hope, frequently of a loneliness so deep it seemed to have substance of its own. Ibrahim and Zara, the Moorish servant couple she had brought with her from Morocco, cared for the house with absolute discretion. They understood, without words being necessary, that their mistress preferred silence to superficial conversations, that she valued loyalty above any other virtue. "The lady needs company," Zara would murmur sometimes when arranging Anna's chambers. "A young woman shouldn't live like a nun." But Anna would only smile sadly and change the subject. How to explain that she had known marriage only as a golden prison, that the idea of surrendering her freedom again to a man terrified her more than the prospect of eternal solitude? Saturday afternoons, Anna would ride Mendoza, a dapple-grey mare of gentle temperament, and ride through the surrounding fields. It was during these escapes that she felt closest to true peace. The wind in her hair, the gentle rhythm of hooves on dry earth, the sensation of movement without destination, everything conspired to calm the constant turmoil in her chest. On her rides, Anna sometimes encountered peasants working in neighboring olive groves. They greeted her respectfully, removing their hats and murmuring, "Good afternoon, Senora." Some of the older ones vaguely remembered the Mendoza family, from the times when her father was still prosperous. But no one asked questions about her Moroccan past. Andalusian discretion protected her like an invisible cloak. The nights were the most difficult time. Alone in the library she had created in one of the cortijo's rooms, Ana read French novels and translated Arabic poetry. She had discovered in herself a passion for literature she never knew existed, and books became her most faithful companions. But it was also during these silent nights that ghosts from the past visited her. She sometimes dreamed of Mustafa, not as the man who had almost possessed her, but as a paternal figure who had died before truly knowing her. She dreamed of the almond trees of Jerez, of balls she had never danced, of children she had never had. And it was in these moments when melancholy threatened to engulf her completely that Ana would rise and walk to the window facing the strait. In the darkness, she could distinguish the distant lights of the African coast, and remembered that she had survived storms much worse than solitude. She didn't know that, at that exact moment, in the Rif Mountains, a young man with dark eyes was making preparations for a journey that would change both destinies irreversibly. The spring of 1904 brought with it winds of change that Ana couldn't yet perceive, but which already whispered her name through the olive trees and announced that her voluntary seclusion was coming to an end. It was on an April morning, when the almond trees were covered with white flowers like bridal veils, that Ana saw the horseman for the first time. She was on the terrace having her morning coffee when movement in the valley caught her attention. A man on horseback, slowly climbing the trail that led to the cortijo. Even at a distance, there was something in his posture that made her frown with unease. It wasn't the urgency of a messenger nor the hesitation of a traveling salesman. There was determination in that movement, as if the rider knew exactly where he was going and why. Ana called Ibrahim with a discreet gesture. The Moorish servant appeared silently, his eyes already following the direction of his mistress's gaze. "Someone comes to visit us," she murmured. "Prepare to receive, but with caution." Ibrahim nodded and disappeared into the house's interior. Ana remained on the terrace observing the stranger's approach. As he drew closer, she could distinguish more details. A young man, probably in his 30s, of elegant bearing even in the saddle. He wore good-quality traveling clothes, dark leather pants, white shirt, and a cloak that fluttered lightly in the morning breeze. When he finally reached the cortijo's courtyard, Ana could see his face. It was undeniably beautiful, with features that mixed Arab nobility with something softer, perhaps French influence. His dark eyes were intelligent and observant, and there was a gravity in his expression that made her swallow hard. The rider dismounted with fluid elegance and headed to the main door. Ana heard the muffled conversation with Ibrahim, conducted in rapid and fluent Arabic. Then, footsteps in the marble corridor, and Ibrahim appeared on the terrace with a cautious expression. "Senora," he said in a low voice, "the gentleman presents himself as Omar Ben Ali. He says he is son of the late Mustafa Ben Ali. He requests an audience." Ana felt as if the world had stopped spinning for a moment. Omar? She vaguely remembered the name. The youngest son who was studying in France during her marriage, the only one who hadn't been present during the disputes over the inheritance. "Receive him in the sitting room," she said finally, her voice firmer than expected. "Offer him tea. I'll come down in a few minutes." Ana went up to her chambers with legs that seemed not to belong to her. She stopped before the silver mirror, observing her own reflection with critical eyes. The blue-grey dress was appropriate, sober but elegant. She adjusted some strands that had escaped the chignon and pinched her cheeks to give them a bit of color. Why was she nervous? It was a question she preferred not to answer. When she came down to the sitting room, she found Omar Ben Ali standing by the window, observing the lavender fields that extended beyond the garden. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and Ana had the opportunity to study him more attentively. He was even more handsome up close, with a beauty that carried both masculine strength and an almost feminine sensitivity. His eyes, the same dark brown as his father's but warmer, examined her with respectful interest. "Senora Ben Ali," he said, bowing in an elegant reverence. "It's an honor to finally meet you." His voice was deep and educated, with a slight French accent that made each word even more seductive. Ana felt an inexplicable warmth spread across her cheeks. "Senor Ben Ali," she replied, maintaining formal posture. "What brings you here?" Omar hesitated only a moment before responding. I came seeking answers about my father's death and about certain questions that remained unresolved. Anna gestured for him to sit, she herself choosing an armchair that maintained a respectful distance. Ibrahim served mint tea in golden glass cups, and the familiar aroma brought back memories of the palace in Tangier. "I don't know what answers I can offer that aren't already known," said Anna carefully. "Your father died in peace, surrounded by care." "Yes," Omar nodded slowly, "but there are inconsistencies in the information that reached me. Details that don't make sense." Anna felt a knot form in her stomach. "What kind of inconsistencies?" Omar studied her for a long moment, his eyes seeming to see beyond the careful words and controlled expressions. "My father was a man of robust health. His sudden death and the circumstances raise questions. Sometimes Allah's destiny is inscrutable," Anna replied, using a phrase she had learned during her months in Morocco. "Sometimes," Omar agreed, "and sometimes there's more story to be told than appears on the surface." The silence that followed vibrated with unspoken tensions. Anna had the sensation of being carefully evaluated, as if Omar could read in her soul the secrets she had guarded so zealously. "Do you plan to stay long in Andalusia?" she asked, changing the subject. "That depends," said Omar, an almost imperceptible smile touching his lips, "on what I manage to discover." And at that moment, Anna knew that her peaceful seclusion had come to an end. The past had sent an emissary, and he had the most disturbing eyes she had ever seen. In the weeks that followed, Omar Ben Ali became a constant presence in the Cortijo's surroundings. He had rented a room at Don Esteban's inn in the nearby village, but seemed to find daily reasons to visit Anna. Always polite, always respectful, always carrying a plausible pretext. He brought wild flowers he had picked on the hillside, books of Arabic poetry he thought she might appreciate, or simply requested permission to walk through the gardens that reminded him of those from his childhood in Fez. Anna found herself awaiting these visits with an anxiety that disturbed her. She spent more time choosing dresses, arranged the terrace flowers with special care, and caught herself rehearsing casual conversations before the mirror. Omar was different from any man she had known. There was a European education in him that mixed harmoniously with Moorish courtesy, creating a natural elegance that left her speechless. He spoke with equal facility about French philosophy and Andalusian poetry, about international politics and Moroccan tribal traditions. "Does the lady read Arabic?" he asked one afternoon, finding her in the library with a volume of Al-Mutanabbi open in her lap. "Very little," Anna admitted, feeling her cheeks flush. "I tried to learn during my time in Tangier, but the circumstances weren't conducive to study," Omar completed with delicacy. Anna observed him with surprise. There was compassion in his voice, as if he understood more about her situation than he let show. "May I?" Omar gestured to the book. Anna handed it to him, watching how his long dark fingers leafed through the pages with reverence. "This is one of my favorite poems." He began to recite in Arabic, his melodious voice transforming the words into music that seemed to float in the library's perfumed air. Anna closed her eyes, letting herself be carried by the hypnotic rhythm of the recitation. "What does it mean?" she asked when he finished. "The hearts of the noble are anguished by things that make the hearts of the vile rejoice," Omar translated, his eyes fixed on her face. Al-Mutanabbi spoke about the difference between elevated and vulgar souls. Anna felt there was something more behind this choice, a subtle message she couldn't completely decipher. The days succeeded each other in this delicate dance of approach and retreat. Omar never crossed the property's boundaries, never forced intimate conversations, but his constant presence began to break down the defenses Anna had carefully built during years of solitude. It was during a walk through the olive groves that he finally touched on the subject both had avoided. "My family blames you for my father's death," said Omar abruptly, stopping beside a century-old tree whose twisted trunk created complex shadows on the ground. Anna felt her heart race. I know you weren't at fault," Omar interrupted gently. "I spent months investigating, talking to doctors, servants, anyone who was in the palace during that period." Anna stared at him, not knowing whether she should feel relief or terror. "And what did you discover?" Omar hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. "I discovered that my father had planned your marriage for a long time, that he had manipulated the circumstances to force your family into desperation. The words hit Anna like stabs. Manipulated how? He had bought your father's debts, created situations that made payment impossible. The marriage wasn't coincidence. It was a carefully prepared trap. Anna leaned against the olive tree's trunk, feeling her legs waver. During all those years, she had carried the guilt of having been sold by her family. Now she discovered she had been hunted like prey from the beginning. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispered. Omar approached, stopping at a respectful distance but close enough for Anna to see the golden nuances in his dark eyes. "Because you deserve to know the truth, and because—" he hesitated. "Because I would like to ask your forgiveness for my family's crimes." Anna studied him with renewed attention. There was sincerity in every line of his face, an honesty that contrasted dramatically with the intrigues and falsehoods she had known in Tangier. "There's nothing to forgive," she said finally. "You weren't responsible for your father's actions." "Perhaps not," Omar agreed, "but I am responsible for trying to repair the damages if possible." "And how do you intend to do that?" Omar smiled then, and Anna felt something move in her chest, a sensation she had forgotten could exist. "I'm still discovering," he said, "but I would like to begin by being your friend, if you permit me." Anna looked at that man who simultaneously represented her painful past and a possibility of future she didn't dare imagine. In the gentle afternoon breeze, perfumed by orange blossoms, she made a decision that would change everything. Friendship would be welcome, she whispered. And it was thus, under the shade of a century-old olive tree, that Anna began to learn that not all men from the Ben Ali family were traps disguised as destiny. Summer came to Andalusia like a golden caress, bringing with it long days perfumed by jasmine and warm nights when the stars seemed closer to earth. With it, the friendship between Anna and Omar had flourished into a careful intimacy that perpetually danced on the fine line between the permitted and the forbidden. Omar now spent entire afternoons at the cortijo, always with Ibrahim or Zara nearby, maintaining the appearances of propriety that protected Anna's reputation. But there were moments, glances that lingered beyond necessary, hands that brushed when passing a book, silences charged with unspoken meanings, that spoke of feelings growing beyond both their control. Anna found herself living for these visits. For the first time in years, she woke with expectation instead of resignation. She chose dresses thinking of how the color would enhance her eyes, arranged the garden flowers imagining Omar's compliments, prepared conversations about books she knew he would appreciate. "The lady is different," observed Zara one morning while arranging Anna's hair. "There's a light in your eyes I hadn't seen for a long time." Anna pretended not to understand the comment, but her reflection in the mirror confirmed the servant's words. There was indeed a new luminosity in her face, a softness in features that years of solitude had hardened. It was on a July afternoon, when the heat made the air thick as honey, that the tension finally found words. Omar had arrived bringing a copy of Garcilaso de la Vega, and they sat in the vine-covered pergola to read together. Anna recited the sonnets in Spanish, Omar translated them into Arabic, creating a bilingual symphony that echoed through the gardens. "En tanto que de rosa y azucena se muestra la color en vuestro gesto," Anna read, her soft voice carrying Renaissance melancholy. "It's about you, he writes," murmured Omar, when she finished the sonnet. Anna raised her eyes from the book, meeting his intense gaze. "Omar, forgive me," he said quickly, "but I can no longer pretend I feel only friendship. These months, knowing you, seeing your strength, your dignity, Anna, No," she whispered, rising abruptly. "So you can't say these things." Omar rose too, approaching carefully, as if she were a frightened animal ready to flee. "Why not? Because I was my father's wife. Because people will say it's inappropriate. Because I don't know how to love," said Anna, the words coming out in a torrent of painful sincerity. "Because everything I know about men I learned through fear and obligation. Because I don't know if I would be capable of—" Omar extended his hand, delicately touching her face. Anna shuddered at the contact but didn't pull away. "You don't need to know now," he said softly. "You just need to allow me to teach you." The kiss happened like sunset, gradual, inevitable, tinting everything around with new colors. Omar kissed her with a tenderness she had never imagined possible, his hands framing her face as if she were made of precious porcelain. Anna felt something break inside her, years of ice melting under the heat of a passion she had believed impossible for her. When they separated, she had tears in her eyes. "Don't cry," murmured Omar, drying the tears with his thumb. "There's no sadness in what I feel for you." "They're not tears of sadness," whispered Anna. "They're of fear, of hope, of not knowing the difference between the two." In the weeks that followed, they courted each other with the delicacy of two souls that had suffered deep wounds. Omar respected each of Anna's hesitations, each moment when she needed to withdraw to process feelings too new for her limited experience. He brought her small gifts, a rare flower found in the mountains, a poem copied by hand, a whistled melody he had composed thinking of her. Anna responded in her way, embroidering handkerchiefs with their intertwined initials, preparing Moroccan sweets she had learned from the servants in Tangier, reading to him in her hesitant Arabic. It was on an August night, when the full moon poured silver over the gardens and the air was thick with the perfume of 4 o'clocks, that Anna finally understood she was hopelessly in love. Omar had arrived for dinner, a formal occasion with Ibrahim serving and Zara supervising every detail of protocol. But when the servants retired and they were alone on the terrace, formality dissolved like sugar in rain. "Anna," said Omar, taking her hand between his, "I need to tell you something important." She felt her heart accelerate. "What?" "I'm in love with you. Completely, irremediably in love. And if you permit me, I would like to court you properly with the intention of—" "Of what?" whispered Anna, though she knew the answer. "Of making you my true wife. Of giving you everything my father denied you. Choice, happiness, a marriage based on love." Anna looked at that man who had come to her like an unexpected gift from destiny. In the moon's silver light, his eyes shone with absolute sincerity. "Yes," she said, her voice almost inaudible. "Yes, Omar. The answer is yes." And when he kissed her again, Anna finally understood the difference between being taken and surrendering by one's own will. It was the difference between storm and gentle rain, both wet, but only one nourished the soil so flowers could grow. Autumn came early that year, tinting the leaves of neighboring vines with tones of gold and crimson that rivaled the sunsets over the strait. Anna observed the changing seasons with a happiness she had never experienced, as if the entire world had become more beautiful since Omar entered her life. They had established a delicious routine of respectful courtship. Omar came to the cortijo every afternoon, always bringing some small gift, books, flowers, honey and almond sweets he bought in the village. They walked through the gardens, read together in the library, talked about everything and nothing until the stars appeared in the violet sky. Anna had discovered in him a perfect companion, someone who could discuss philosophy with the same passion with which he recited poetry, who made her laugh with stories of his years in Paris and moved her with memories of childhood in Morocco. More importantly, he was someone who respected her silences, who didn't force confidences or intimacies for which she wasn't yet ready. It was on an October morning, when she woke feeling a strange nausea, that Anna began to suspect her life was about to change irreversibly. Initially, she attributed the discomfort to the fig sweets she had eaten the night before. But when the sensation repeated in the following days, always at the same morning hour, a terrifying possibility began to form in her mind. Zara was the first to notice. Anna was in the garden, cutting roses to arrange in a vase, when she felt the familiar wave of nausea. She ran to the bushes and vomited discreetly, hoping no one had seen. "Senora," said Zara behind her, her voice loaded with meaning. "How long since your moon came?" Anna straightened slowly, cleaning her mouth with an embroidered handkerchief. The servant's question echoed in the morning air like a cathedral bell. "I don't know. Maybe a month? 2? Zara approached, her experienced eyes studying Anna's face with maternal attention. "And the nausea, always in the morning?" Anna nodded, feeling her legs waver. Zara guided her to a stone bench under an orange tree, sitting beside her with a grave expression. "The lady needs to see a doctor," she said softly. "But I suspect you carry a blessing." "A blessing." Anna put her hand on her still flat belly, trying to imagine a life growing there inside. The idea was simultaneously wonderful and terrifying. That night she couldn't sleep. She walked through her chambers like a caged animal, her mind spinning in circles of worry. If she was pregnant, and every fiber of her being told her she was, it would be Omar's child. There was no doubt about that, since Mustafa had never touched her. But who would believe her? Who wouldn't think she was trying to pass another man's child as legitimate heir to the Ben Ali fortune? 3 days later, the village doctor confirmed her suspicions. Anna was pregnant, approximately 2 months along. Dr. Mendez, an elderly man with gentle manners, observed her reaction with concern. "It's natural to feel disturbed, Senora," he said, packing his instruments. "Widowhood and a new pregnancy, but the child seems healthy." Anna thanked him politely, but her mind was already racing ahead, anticipating complications the good doctor couldn't imagine. When Omar arrived for his evening visit, Anna found herself unable to look him in the eyes. They pretended normalcy during tea, talking about trivialities, but she knew he perceived her tension. It was when they walked through the garden that Omar finally stopped and faced her. "Anna, what's happening? You're different today, how distant." She looked at him, that beautiful and gentle man who had brought light back to her life, and felt tears burn her eyes. "Omar, I need to tell you something important." He guided her to the pergola, sitting beside her on the wrought iron bench. His hands found hers, transmitting warmth and security. "You can tell me anything," he said softly. Anna took a deep breath, gathering courage. "I'm expecting a child." The silence that followed seemed eternal. Anna observed Omar's face process the information, saw surprise give way to understanding, and then to something she couldn't identify. "My child," he said finally, not as a question, but as an affirmation. "Yes," whispered Anna. "Your child." Omar rose abruptly, walking to the pergola's edge. Anna observed his tense back, the way his hands opened and closed nervously. "Omar," she called, her heart tight with anxiety. He turned then, and Anna saw there were tears in his eyes. But when he smiled, it was with such pure joy that she felt her own heart accelerate. "Anna," he said, returning to her side and taking her face between his hands, "you've given me the most precious gift in the world. But the complications, what your family will say, people will think—" "I don't care what they think," Omar interrupted firmly. "You are my woman. This child is my child, and I'll do anything necessary to protect you both." When he kissed her, Anna felt she was finally complete. For the first time in her life, she carried a life that was created in love, not in obligation. And for the first time, she had beside her a man who saw this life as a blessing, not as a complication. But while she surrendered to the happiness of the moment, a small voice in her mind whispered that the greatest storms were yet to come. The letter arrived on a cold November morning, brought by an Arab messenger who had ridden without stop from Gibraltar. Anna saw it arrive from the window of her chambers, where she embroidered baby clothes in white linen, and knew instinctively that the news wouldn't be good. Omar was in the garden pruning the rose bushes for winter when Ibrahim handed him the envelope sealed with the Ben Ali family seal. Anna watched from afar as he read, saw his shoulders stiffen and the way his hands involuntarily crumpled the paper. When he raised his eyes toward the window, Anna saw in them a storm that made her shudder. "I need to go to Fez," said Omar when they met in the library. His voice was controlled, but Anna perceived the underlying tension. "My brothers learned of our situation." Anna instinctively put her hand over her belly, where the 4-month pregnancy was already beginning to show in tighter clothes. "How did they find out? Merchants talk, servants whisper, distant relatives write letters," said Omar with bitterness. "In Morocco, secrets don't exist for long." He approached her, taking her hands between his. Anna noticed they trembled slightly. "Anna, you need to know that no matter what happens, no matter what my family says or does, my loyalty is with you and our child. It always will be." "What can they do?" asked Anna, though she feared the answer. Omar hesitated. "They can disinherit me. They can deny legitimacy to the child. They can try to cause legal problems, question your rights to my father's inheritance." Anna felt a chill in her stomach. For months she had lived in a bubble of happiness, temporarily forgetting the complications her situation represented. "Then go," she said, forcing firmness into her voice. "Face them. But be careful, Omar. Promise me you'll be careful." He left 2 days later, on a morning wrapped in fog. Anna watched him disappear on the road leading to the port, carrying with him a part of her heart and leaving her alone with her growing pregnancy and multiplied worries. The weeks that followed were the longest of Anna's life. No news arrived, there were no letters, only the ominous silence that made her imagine the worst possibilities. She tried to keep busy with embroidery and reading, but her mind always returned to Omar, facing alone the fury of a powerful family. It was Zara who brought the first news, whispered by Moorish merchants who frequented the village market. "They say there was a great family council in Fez," she murmured while arranging Anna's hair. "They say Omar Ben Ali faced all his brothers and uncles, declared his intentions to marry the lady." "And what else do they say?" asked Anna, trying to keep her voice calm. "They say it was a great scandal, that they threatened to remove him from the family, deny him inheritance, but they also say he didn't yield." Anna felt simultaneously pride and terror. Pride for the courageous man who had chosen to defend her, terror for the consequences this choice could bring. The answer came on a December afternoon when the almond trees were bare against the grey sky. Omar returned as suddenly as he had left, appearing in the cortijo's courtyard on a horse covered with foam, his eyes shining with fierce determination. Anna ran to meet him, not caring about appearances or protocols. He embraced her right there in the middle of the courtyard, kissing her with a passion that spoke of weeks of longing. "Everything is decided," he said, when they finally separated. "I renounced everything. Inheritance, titles, position in the family. I am no longer a Ben Ali in the clan's eyes." Anna felt as if the ground was moving under her feet. "Omar, you can't—" "For my sake." "It wasn't for your sake," he interrupted firmly. "It was for our sake, for the family we're building, for a future where our child can grow free from the poisonous traditions that almost destroyed us." That night, sitting before the library fireplace, Omar told her details of the confrontation, how he had faced not only his brothers, but uncles, cousins, and even the clan patriarch, how he had declared his intention to marry Anna according to Christian rites, publicly recognize the child's paternity, and restart life far from family intrigues. "And I also renounce," said Anna suddenly, "to Mustafa's inheritance, to the properties in Morocco, to everything that ties me to that family." Omar looked at her with surprise. "Anna, you don't need to." "I do need to," she said firmly. "I want our child to be born free, without the weight of inheritances stained with blood and lies. We have enough with this cortijo and my Andalusian properties. We can be happy with just that." Omar took her hands, kissing each finger with reverence. "Are you sure? You're renouncing a fortune." "I'm choosing true wealth," said Anna. "I'm choosing love." And it was thus, on a winter night perfumed by olive wood burning in the fireplace, that Anna and Omar decided to cut all ties with the past and build a future based only on what was truest between them. Outside, the wind whispered among the bare almond trees, but Anna didn't feel cold. For the first time in her life, she felt truly free. The spring of 1905 came to Andalusia, like a symphony of colors and aromas. The almond trees exploded in white and pink flowers, the fields covered themselves with red poppies and wild daisies, and the air filled with the sweet perfume of orange trees in bloom. Anna, now 7 months pregnant, moved through the cortijo gardens like a serene queen, her rounded belly a tangible promise of future happiness. Omar no longer returned to Morocco. He had established himself definitively at the cortijo, occupying a room on the upper floor, and maintaining the appearances of propriety that protected Anna's reputation until they could marry officially. But they were tenuous appearances. Any attentive observer could see in the exchanged glances, in the careful gestures, in the silent intimacy between them, that they were much more than guest and hostess. "Father Don Cristobal is willing to celebrate the ceremony," said Omar one morning, returning from his visit to the village parish. "He knew your family, remembers when you were a child. He says it will be an honor to unite you in matrimony." Anna smiled, distractedly caressing her belly where the child moved restlessly. "And when?" "Whenever you wish," Omar replied, kneeling beside the chair where she embroidered. "Although I suggest it be soon. Our daughter seems impatient to know the world." "Daughter?" Anna arched an eyebrow, amused. What makes you think it will be a girl? Omar placed his hand over Anna's belly, his eyes softening when he felt the baby move under his palm. Intuition, and because I would like her to be exactly like her mother, beautiful, strong, dignified. Anna covered his hand with hers. In the months since his return from Fez, Omar had transformed before her eyes. The constant tension had disappeared, replaced by a serenity she had never seen in him. It was as if, by renouncing the past, he had finally found his true self. "Then let's marry next week," said Anna impulsively, "before I become too big to fit in a wedding dress." The wedding took place on a golden April morning in the small white stone church that crowned the village hill. Anna wore a simple cream silk outfit, embroidered with small flowers she herself had sewn during the silent winter nights. Omar wore a dark suit of French cut, his dark hair combed back, highlighting the aristocratic beauty of his features. The ceremony was intimate. Only Don Cristobal, Ibrahim and Zara as witnesses, and some curious neighbors who had grown fond of the mysterious couple. The ritual words sounded like music to Anna's ears. To love and respect, in health and sickness, in wealth and poverty. When Omar slipped the simple gold ring onto her finger, Anna felt as if an invisible chain that bound her to the past finally broke. She was no longer Anna Mendoza, the young woman sold in marriage. She was no longer Anna Ben Ali, the suspect widow. She was Anna Beloved. Omar had insisted on creating a new surname, a word that meant beloved in English. "Beloved," he had explained, "because that's what you are, and that's what our family will be, a family of beloved ones." The kiss that sealed the union was soft and full of promises. Anna felt tears roll down her cheeks, but they were tears of pure joy, without traces of the melancholy that had marked her life for so long. The celebration that followed was simple, but joyful. Ibrahim had prepared a banquet with Andalusian and Moroccan dishes, mixing the two cultures that now united harmoniously. Zara had decorated the courtyard with wild flowers and colorful fabrics, creating a setting that seemed from a fairy tale. "To the new beloved family," toasted Don Cristobal, raising a chalice of Jerez wine. "May Allah and Lord Jesus bless this union with many years of happiness." When night fell and the guests departed, Anna and Omar finally found themselves alone as legitimate husband and wife. They climbed the marble staircase together, their hands intertwined, hearts beating in unison. In the chambers they would now share, Omar helped Anna out of her wedding dress, his fingers trembling slightly with the emotion of the moment. When she remained only in her embroidered linen chemise, he embraced her with infinite tenderness. "My wife," he murmured against her hair. "Finally, my true wife." Anna pulled back enough to look into his eyes. "And you are my true husband, the first and only." They loved each other that night with the passion of souls that had finally found their safe harbor. Omar was infinitely gentle, conscious of Anna's advanced pregnancy, but she responded with an ardor that surprised her. It was as if, finally free from the chains of the past, she could surrender completely to the present. Afterward, lying between linen sheets perfumed with lavender, Anna caressed Omar's chest while listening to his heartbeat steady and calm. "You saved me," she whispered in the darkness, perfumed by the breeze entering through open windows. "We saved each other," Omar corrected, kissing the top of her head. Mutually. And as they fell asleep embraced, the child moved gently in Anna's womb, as if also celebrating the peace that had finally come to their family. Outside, the almond trees whispered in the night wind, their white flowers shining like earthly stars under the full moon. It was a portent of happiness, a sign that difficult times had finally passed. The June heat covered Andalusia like a golden blanket when Anna felt the first pains. She was in the garden picking roses to arrange in the sitting room, when a sudden contraction made her double over, the wicker basket slipping from her hands and scattering red petals over the dry earth. "Omar!" she called, her voice carrying a note of urgency that made birds take flight from the nearby orange trees. He appeared running from the library, still holding the book he was reading. When he saw Anna leaning against the fountain's railing, her face contracted with pain, he understood immediately. "The child," he murmured, reaching her side and putting his arm around her waist. "It's time." Anna nodded, breathing deeply as the contraction passed. "It's still too early. 3 weeks remain." "Babies choose their own time," said Zara, appearing as if she had been summoned. The Moorish servant had been through 5 births herself and recognized the signs. "Ibrahim, go fetch the midwife, quickly." The hours that followed were a mixture of pain and anticipation, of fear and hope intertwined like threads of a complex fabric. Anna settled in the main bedroom, where Zara had prepared everything with silent efficiency: boiling water, clean towels, perfumed oils to massage away the pains. Omar remained beside the bed, holding Anna's hand during each contraction, whispering words of encouragement in Arabic and Spanish. When the pain became unbearable, he sang softly melodies from his childhood, his deep voice creating an atmosphere of calm in the midst of the storm. "Tell me about Fez," Anna asked, during a moment of truce, trying to distract herself from the growing pain. "About your childhood," Omar smiled, caressing her damp hair. "There was a garden in the palace where my mother used to take me when I was small. It had a fountain in the center, surrounded by rose bushes that bloomed year-round. She said the sound of running water was Allah's music." His voice became a guiding thread that led Anna through the waves of pain. She clung to his words like a drowning person grabs a rope, using his memories to create a shield against the fear that threatened to dominate her. It was when the sun began to set, tinting the room with gold and pink, that things intensified. The midwife, an elderly and experienced woman named Dolores, declared that the baby was ready to be born. "Now you need to push, child," she said with authority. "When you feel the next pain, push with all your strength." Anna gripped Omar's hand so tightly that her nails left marks on his skin. When the contraction came, she pushed with a force she didn't know she possessed, a scream tearing from her throat as her body struggled to bring new life into the world. "I see the head," exclaimed Dolores. "One more time, dear. One more time and your baby will be here." Anna gathered all her strength for one last effort. She felt something move, slip, and then sudden relief, followed by the most beautiful sound she had ever heard, the strong and indignant cry of a newborn. "It's a girl," announced Dolores, lifting a red and perfect little creature. "A beautiful and healthy girl." Omar laughed and cried at the same time, kissing Anna's sweaty forehead, while Dolores cleaned and wrapped the baby in soft linen. When they finally placed the child in Anna's arms, she looked down and saw a perfect little face, with her father's dark eyes and a little mouth that already instinctively searched for food. "She's perfect," whispered Anna, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Absolutely perfect." Omar delicately touched his daughter's face, his expression a mixture of adoration and amazement. "What shall we call her?" Anna had thought about names for months, but now, looking at that baby, who had arrived like a miracle of true love, only one name seemed adequate. "Esperanza," she said softly. "Our little Esperanza." Omar repeated the name, testing it. "Esperanza, beloved, it's perfect." As the sun set completely and the first stars appeared in the violet sky, the small family remained united in the room perfumed by rosewater. Anna nursed Esperanza for the first time, marveling at the instinctive strength with which the baby clung to life. "She already knows what she wants," observed Omar, touching the tiny fingers that closed around his finger. "Like her mother," said Anna, with a tired but radiant smile. It was then, in that moment of perfect happiness, that Anna finally understood her journey had come to an end. No longer the young woman sold in marriage, no longer the suspect widow, no longer the woman alone guarding painful secrets. She was simply Anna beloved, beloved wife, happy mother, woman who had found her place in the world. When Esperanza finally fell asleep between them, Omar carefully embraced Anna, conscious of her post-birth fatigue. "Thank you," he murmured against her hair. "For what? For giving me a true family, for teaching me what unconditional love is, for being exactly who you are." Anna closed her eyes, feeling complete for the first time in her life. The past had finally lost its power over her. The future shone like a golden promise, and in the perfumed silence of the Andalusian night, 3 hearts beat in perfect harmony, creating a symphony of love that would echo through the years to come. 5 years passed, like golden pages from a fairy tale book. The cortijo had transformed into a true home, full of children's laughter and the constant perfume of domestic happiness. Anna, now 31, had flourished into mature and serene beauty, like a rose that had finally found the ideal soil for its roots. Esperanza had grown into a lively and curious child, with her father's dark eyes and her mother's silent dignity. At 5 years old, she already spoke 3 languages: Spanish with Anna, Arabic with Omar, and French that Omar taught her on Sunday afternoons. She ran through the gardens like a little Moorish princess, her laughter echoing among the almond trees that had witnessed so many transformations. That May morning of 1910, Anna was on the terrace preparing flowers for the village spring festival when an unknown carriage climbed the cortijo's trail. Omar, who was playing with Esperanza in the garden, stopped to observe the visitors approach. They were 3 men of elegant bearing, dressed with the sobriety of lawyers or prosperous merchants. The oldest, with greying beard and intelligent eyes, descended first from the carriage and headed to the main door with measured steps. "Senor Omar, beloved?" he asked when Ibrahim received him. "Who seeks him?" Omar replied, approaching with Esperanza's hand in his. "I am Rashid al-Maghribi, lawyer for the Ben Ali family. I bring news that may interest you and your wife." Anna descended from the terrace, her heart instinctively tightening. 5 years of peace had made her forget that the past could still send messengers. "What kind of news?" she asked, taking Omar's free hand. Rashid observed the united family, the tall and elegant man, the serene woman of touching beauty, the large-eyed child hiding behind her mother's skirts, and his face softened slightly. "Hassan Ben Ali died last month," he said without circumlocution. As he was the last of Mustafa Ben Ali's older sons without direct descendants, certain properties returned to the family's main patrimony. Omar frowned. "And how does this concern us?" "Hassan's will contains a specific clause about you, Senor Omar. Apparently, in his last years of life, he came to the conclusion that he had unjustly treated your decision to marry your father's widow." Anna felt her legs waver. Omar supported her discreetly, both awaiting what would come next. "Hassan left instructions for a significant part of the inheritance to be offered to you and your family, as belated recognition that you followed your heart honorably." The silence that followed was broken only by the distant song of a nightingale in the gardens. "What kind of inheritance?" asked Omar cautiously. "Properties in Morocco valued at approximately £200,000 sterling. Enough to make you one of the richest families in Andalusia." Anna looked at Omar, then at Esperanza, who was playing with fallen flowers at their feet. £200,000, a fortune that would change everything, that would give them power, influence, the ability to live like European nobility. "And if we refuse?" asked Anna suddenly. Rashid seemed surprised. "Refuse?" "Senora, it's a fortune." "We are rich enough," said Anna firmly, looking around the cortijo they had transformed into home. "We have love, health, a wonderful daughter, good land, loyal friends. What more could we desire?" Omar smiled, recognizing in his wife the same wisdom that had made him renounce the first inheritance years before. "My wife is right," he said to Rashid. "We thank Hassan's generosity, but our wealth isn't measured in pounds or properties." Rashid shook his head, incredulous. "Should I officially register that you refuse the inheritance?" "You should," Omar confirmed. "And you can add that we live as we choose to live, in peace with love, free from the complications that great fortunes bring." After the lawyers left, the family remained in the garden, processing what had happened. Esperanza, without fully understanding the situation, ran among the flowering almond trees, her clear laughter echoing in the perfumed air. "No regrets?" asked Anna, watching the carriage disappear on the road. "None," Omar replied, embracing her. "I have everything I ever wanted right here." Anna looked around, at the white stone cortijo bathed in the afternoon's golden light, at the gardens where so many tears had been shed and so many smiles born, at the daughter who ran free as a bird among the flowers. "Do you know what I learned in all these years?" she said, leaning against Omar's chest. "I learned that happiness doesn't come from what we possess, but from what we choose to value." Omar kissed the top of her head. "And what do you choose to value?" Anna closed her eyes, breathing the perfume of the almond trees that had witnessed her transformation from frightened young woman to fulfilled woman. "This moment," she said softly, "this family, this love that grew despite all storms, the certainty that our daughter will grow up knowing it's possible to choose happiness, even when the world tries to convince us otherwise." Esperanza ran to them, bringing a handful of almond petals. "Mama, Papa, see how beautiful they are." Anna knelt to receive the flowers, embracing her daughter against her chest. They're lovely, dear, like everything that grows with love. That night, when Esperanza was asleep, and they found themselves alone on the terrace, Anna and Omar contemplated the stars shining over their humble but love-filled property. "Do you ever regret?" asked Omar. "Having married a man who renounced two fortunes for love?" Anna laughed, the crystalline sound echoing in the perfumed night. "Never, because I understood that there are riches that can't be inherited or bought. They can only be built day by day, choice by choice, love by love." Omar kissed her then, a kiss that carried the wisdom of shared years and the promise of many more to come. And as they kissed under the Andalusian stars, the perfume of the flowering almond trees enveloped them like a blessing, reminding them that they had chosen true wealth, the only kind that endures beyond seasons and transcends circumstances. Because Anna had finally learned that true love isn't imposed or bought. It offers itself, is cared for, is protected, and when it's reciprocated with the same purity, it creates roots so deep that not even the most violent storms can uproot them. And so under the starry mantle of the Andalusian night, Anna's story found its perfect ending, not in grand gestures or grandiose fortunes, but in the sacred simplicity of a family that had chosen love above all other riches in the world.